The wonderful thing about our program is we get to turn some things that are considered either urban blight or maybe a scar on the community into an opportunity. Sometimes we never know what that outcome is going to be. And this was an opportunity where we can actually use those EPA funds to assist in the cleanup of this site to prepare it for that next opportunity. That's really what our group is about. We really love redevelopment and providing opportunities to the communities that we serve.
The Brownfields Section of the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection's Office of Environmental Remediation works with communities to address environmental issues involving abandoned or underutilized properties and allow them to be redeveloped and returned to productive use. Here are 5 stories of 5 brownfield projects and 5 communities transformed. If there can be such a thing as a typical brownfield property, the Fenton Art Glass plant in Williamstown would be a good example. Built in 1906, the site covered 2 acres and employed 725 employees at its peak. Fenton is known for its popular carnival glass.
Fenton produced handmade colored glass, and the company was pretty renowned for the innovative glass colors as well as the hand-painted decorations and the pressed-on and glass-blown glassware. The company unfortunately saw a decline in sales beginning in 2000, and in 2011, the plant closed. In 2016, the West Virginia DEP administered an asbestos lead-based paint and PCB inspection through an environmental contractor. The West Virginia DEP utilized the US EPA Brownfield Assessment Grant funding for this inspection. The asbestos-containing materials, they're also known as ACMs, were found during the inspection. Some of these items included cement boards, flooring tiles, sealants, glues, mastics, even roofing paint.
The asbestos-containing materials were removed before the building was sold to the Wood County school system and demolished. Today, it's home to the new Williamstown Waverly Elementary School, which is set to open this fall. The new school's cafeteria has a glass mural by a local artist that features pieces of Fenton art glass. Sometimes redevelopment means turning brownfields into green spaces. That's what happened with projects in Morgan and Kanawha counties.
The Morgan County Recreational Complex is in Berkeley Springs, and it's about 10 acres in size. Back in the early 1900s, it was used as an orchard, agricultural land, as most of the Eastern Panhandle was, and associated pesticides, herbicides, things like that back in the day. And then by the 1960s, it was utilized as an auto repair, salvage, crushing facility for several years. By the 70s, it turned into a wood furniture manufacturing facility. In the early 1990s, there was a fire and the building burned to the ground, so all that was left was concrete structures, and it remained vacant for many years.
In 2006, the Morgan County Commission purchased the site and used it as a soccer field and adjacent parking lot for the next 2 years.
And then it was discovered that there was metal debris, glass debris from the former manufacturing at the facility. And because it was unsafe, obviously for soccer, they closed it after a couple years, and to determine, upon further investigation, really what to do with the facility.
Over the next few years, the Commission approached the DEP's Office of Environmental Remediation to help with site assessment. When test results came back positive for pesticides in the soil and groundwater from the orchard and petroleum and metal contamination from the auto salvage business, the property was enrolled in the DEP's voluntary remediation program and was granted a certificate of completion in 2017.
The voluntary remediation program is very important. We have sites all across the state that have been underutilized, been vacant for years, for decades sometimes, and it really just takes that, that little bit of assessment for a phase 1 or phase 2. That's why our own Office of Environmental Remediation applies and receives these EPA federal grants for brownfield assessment. And that's why we like to offer assistance for these sites, and really it just takes that little bit of phase 1 site assessment to get a site started and getting it back into being redeveloped.
And today the site is being used as a soccer complex, just as the County Commission originally intended. At the corner of Dixie and Nancy Streets in Charleston, a new neighborhood park adds much-needed green space to the city's east end.
In 2005, the city of Charleston actually received a Brownfield assessment grant from the EPA, and that was to begin to do an inventory of sites in Charleston that they could look at for redevelopment. And East End Park was actually one of the very first sites that they looked at.
At the time, the site consisted of a vacant lot and several residences, some occupied, some abandoned.
They did find at that time that there was a commercial structure in the northwest corner of the property, but they were never really sure what that particular structure was used for. There was also a railroad spur that led to the adjacent canal manufacturing property. They also found a good bit of debris on the property, what might have been construction or demolition debris. They also found out that a lot of that material was also in the subsurface, indicating that fill material had been brought in.
The city purchased the 5 houses and, after addressing asbestos and other contaminants, had them demolished. It's part of a larger redevelopment plan for the neighborhood. Today, the site features a paved walking path, playground equipment, and a covered seating area for special events.
We eliminated a negative, and of course we've created a positive, a place where children and others in the neighborhood can come to that helps make it a more complete neighborhood, a place where people would be more willing to purchase and renovate a home and live here long term. It just provides an alternative place for people that live in these historic homes that have very small yards, that provides an amenity that makes the neighborhood more livable.
Sometimes, instead of demolition, the projects involve preservation, like the former Yearlings Building in downtown Wayne, West Virginia. The 2-story building was built in the 1920s by the Wayne County Oil and Gas Company and used for office and storage space. It was later used as an auto company, a general store, and several other retail establishments. It was last used by Catholic charities as a food pantry. It's currently being developed by the Housing Authority of Wayne County, which required a Phase 1 assessment.
And what a Phase 1 consists of is it's not an investigation where they actually do any physical investigation on the site, like drilling, taking soil samples or putting in monitoring wells. It's mostly a record and interview search. It really consists of searching the titles and deeds in the courthouse to see anybody that could have been associated with the property and any other information. Sometimes it tells functions of the property and business functions.
The Housing Authority plans for retail and office space on the first floor and affordable housing options on the second. A much larger and more involved project was the former Corbin Building in Huntington's Westmoreland neighborhood. Built around 1910, the A.F. Thompson Manufacturing Company made stoves. By the 1960s, the property was leased by Corbin Manufacturing, a maker of men's suits. Corbin ceased operation in 2003, and the property sat empty and was vandalized and broken into repeatedly.
We used Brownfield grant funds that we had obtained from US EPA, and we performed environmental assessments at the site. And that allowed the Wayne County Economic Development Authority, who was the original owner of the site in its redevelopment phase, to acquire ownership of the property without acquiring the environmental liability.
And from there, Coalfield Development Corporation acquired the property.
Coalfield Development is a family of social enterprises here in West Virginia, and part of our projects like this one here is to focus on how to create opportunities out of former liabilities. Whether that's an old abandoned building or a tract of land that wasn't usable before, we try and figure out ways to catalyze those resources into new opportunities for folks.
The facility, renamed West Edge, is home to a growing and diverse collection of entrepreneurs.
Right now we are in the Sustain U enterprise at our West Edge building. It mainly focuses on design, printing, and distribution of our 100% recycled t-shirts that are made from shredded and pelletized textiles that come from former plastic materials. Next door to us we have a wood shop in the facility as well. It makes high-end furniture and custom materials out of reclaimed, repurposed wood. And then we have a large event space where we, before COVID, would hold a lot of great public events and concert series. And then lastly, we have Solar Hauler, which is the largest solar installer in the region, and Refresh Appalachia, which focuses on distributing agriculture goods in the area.
The real advantage is that if you do not do environmental assessment prior to taking ownership of the property, according to Superfund law, you can be held liable as well. And by performing the environmental assessment, they attain what's known as innocent landowner liability limitations. So then we basically document that any contamination was here prior to the innocent landowner taking occupation of the property.
A lot of folks had looked at this site before for potential development or repurposing, and it was just sort of this nebulous question mark as to, you know, what does it entail, what's the liability there. And so utilizing those assessments helped us to really understand, well, wow, there is a swimming pool out there that we didn't know about, and now we can focus on other areas to develop until we can get that more finalized as a project. And so it really helped us to have a roadmap.
That's the basis really of Brownfields, is to not give up on the great assets that we already have so we can reuse beautiful buildings that were well constructed, as opposed to tearing them down and then having to build a new building.
The Office of Environmental Remediation will be receiving more US EPA Brownfield Assessment Grant funds beginning in October this year to conduct more Phase 1 and Phase 2 assessments and continue fulfilling our piece of the redevelopment opportunities for West Virginia communities.